Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 240 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where we can neither confirm nor deny any dealings with the Mistress of Magic who dwells in the Golden Wood.
But plenty of strange things follow here, so draw your own conclusions.
Well, there is that.
And folks, go ahead and pull up a bench in the common room, because I'm Sean Marchese, the Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the Man of the West, who finds no comfort in our speech together.
Every week.
240 episodes. Alan Sisto.
Well, at least I'm not assuming everybody I know is dead, though. There's that.
No, you're not that old yet.
No. That isn't where I was going with that, as we'll get with the text, but okay, fine. Folks, today we are going to speak rash words concerning such things as heirlooms in the second part of The Window on the West.
Obviously, ancient tales haven't taught us anything.
That's right. You ancient tales, you got nothing on us, man.
No. Just cover my ears. La, 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 la. Ancient tales, I'm not going to learn anything from you.
I'm not listening.
But folks, for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. Here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, we are reading and talking our way through Tolkien's stories of Middle-earth, a few pages at a time.
That's right. We dive into the details, point out connections to other writings, and talk about our favorite themes.
But we also make sure we have a lot of fun along the way. So we're glad you've joined us.
And we know you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get into the chapter, it's time for fan favorite Philology Fair.
All right. Thank you, Alan. Well, in this episode, Faramir and Frodo continue their conversation about Isildur's bane. So we thought this would be a perfect opportunity to do a little word nerdery on the word bane, because it is a word with an interesting history. So according to the Oxford English Dictionary, bane is a native English word. It's inherited from Germanic. It comes from Old English bana or bona, spelled either with an A or an O. And there's no Indo-European root that it can be traced to with any certainty, but it does appear across the Germanic language spectrum. It's got cognates in Old Norse, which is bani. There's another word in Danish, bane. Both of those mean death or murder. And there's other words in Gothic and German and other Germanic languages that mean wound or strike that are related as well.
Bane, she wrote, is the name of the television show. It's translated.
That's right. That's the Old Norse Angela Lansbury vehicle.
She was around then, I'm pretty sure. Bane, she wrote. Well, we're practicing.
Wow.
Sorry.
And it appears in Old English as early as around 800 in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, where its original meaning was a slayer or murderer, one who causes the death or destruction of another. In other words, a person or a creature who causes the death or destruction of another.
Okay. Now, we know that Tolkien used the word in that earliest sense, of course. The Balrog, Durin's bane, is the creature who slew Durin the Sixth. But it wasn't too long before bane came to mean a thing that causes one's death, as opposed to a person. Now, this meaning appeared in Beowulf, but became more common in Middle English, including on Crena Riul and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales.
And still later in Middle English, around 1400, it started to take on a more specific meaning of a substance that's poisonous. And that's how it became part of the names of many plants, like henbane, which is still a common name for a poisonous weed. There's leopard's bane, which is a flower that looks kind of like a yellow daisy. And of course, for my fellow horror movie fans, wolf's bane.
Uh-huh.
And then still later, around 1577, bane started to take on a more figurative sense. That's when it started to mean something that causes ruin or woe, or something that's a curse, which is kind of the ordinary sense now. Nowadays, you might hear somebody refer to something as the bane of my existence.
That's right. And now it's become even more figurative, as so many words often do in modern English. You can hear people refer to anything that's even slightly annoying as the bane of my existence.
Right.
A quick Google search reveals people referring to anything from school to a particularly annoying person to homework as the bane of their existence, right?
Certainly feels like it sometimes, I suppose.
Like bad puns are the bane of my existence.
Right.
It's just the way it is. Now, that's hardly a curse, and it's certainly nothing that's going to kill you. It's just something kind of or really annoying, really.
Right, yeah. And so we see that the word has really weakened over time in just a little over 1,000 years, which, okay, I guess it's a fair amount of time for an average human being.
Well, over 1,000 years, I'm going to get a little weakened over time, too.
Yeah.
Talk to me in 1,000 years. We'll see if I can still bench 240, right?
I don't know if I'll be able to talk to you in 1,000 years.
That's my point, son.
And I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear. But yeah, I mean, you see how a word that once meant the person who literally kills you
Right.
now means something that's a moderate annoyance. And now I'm wishing that we could get like a medieval Anglo-Saxon to the 21st century in a TARDIS so that they could hear us talk
Oh
about
yeah.
homework is the bane of my existence. And what? You're really overreacting to that, aren't you?
Seriously, yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of Tolkien's usage of the word bane in The Lord of the Rings is that,
Yeah.
as he does so often, he's taken the word back to its original meaning, both with Durin's bane and with Isildur's bane.
Yeah.
Now, somebody out there might be asking the question, well, when Tolkien uses the term Durin's bane, he's using it in that sense of a person or creature, right? So when he uses the term Isildur's bane to refer to the ring, well, is he thinking of it in the thing sense that we see in late Old English or early Middle English? Or is he taking it back to the original meaning, that original personal sense?
Hmm.
In other words, when he calls the ring Isildur's bane, is he personifying it a little bit? It's an interesting question, although you don't have to look too hard to find an answer in the text in Faramir's voice, right?
No, not at all. In the last chapter, we see Faramir ask Frodo, and what is Isildur's bane? Not who. And of course, that makes sense because he knows it's some sort of an object of some kind. And in this episode, we see he clearly equates it with a thing because he calls it a mighty heirloom of some sort.
That's right. Yeah. So it's clear that, at least in Faramir's mind, it's a thing, not a person.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't put it past Tolkien to be very mindful of the earlier personal sense when he was writing this. And to me, it's an interesting reminder that although the ring itself is not sentient, we've talked about that before, it doesn't really have that kind of sentience that we sort of see in the movies from time to time. But there is a personality and a sentience behind the ring, and that's Sauron and the will and malice that he put into the ring. And so
Yeah.
while Sauron wasn't directly responsible for Isildur's death, certainly the ring that he made is seen by lore masters in Middle-earth as responsible for his death.
Yeah, I mean, I guess technically the arrows from the orcs that pierced his back, but as we'll see, Faramir says, yeah, that wouldn't count. Right.
Exactly. But clearly lore masters must realize that the ring is in some way responsible, otherwise it wouldn't be thought of as Isildur's bane.
Correct.
And I have to think that Sauron would be very satisfied to know that his homemade jewelry project was responsible for the death of Elendil's son, especially considering the unfinished business he had with them and the other faithful of Numenor, right?
Oh, boy, you're not kidding about that. Oh, yeah, that's right. Isildur's bane.
He's like, oh, yeah, I'd love to be the bane of Isildur. Let's see if I can bring
He may
that
have gotten
guy
my
down.
ring, but at least it was his bane. Yeah.
That's right. It brought him down. Yep.
Well, let's go ahead and get back to the text as Faramir learns that Frodo has some friends in high places, like the tops of trees. Sean, you're going to start us off tonight. Paragraph and a half or so after we wrapped up last episode.
Yep. All right, here we go. And I'm picking up in Faramir's dialogue here.
Yeah.
So then you passed through the land of Lorien. Laurelin Dorinan it was named of old, but long now it has lain beyond the knowledge of men, he added softly, regarding Frodo with a new wonder in his eyes. Much that was strange about you I begin now to understand. Will you not tell me more? For it is a bitter thought that Boromir died within sight of the land of his home. No more can I say than I have said, answered Frodo, though your tale fills me with foreboding. A vision it was that you saw, I think, and no more. Some shadow of evil fortune that has been or will be. Unless indeed it is some lying trick of the enemy. I have seen the faces of fair warriors of old laid in sleep beneath the pools of the dead marshes, or seeming so by his foul arts. Nay, it was not so, said Faramir. For his works fill the heart with loathing, but my heart was filled with grief and pity.
All right. We're going to go back and pick up the paragraph or so before you started reading, right after we wrapped up last week. So this is where Frodo's confirming that what Faramir has seen, or what he has described, is an accurate vision of Boromir. And then he provides details on the thing that Faramir knew not, the belt.
Right, which Frodo says, of course, was given to him by Galadriel.
Yep.
She also is the one who gave us these elven gray cloaks and also this brooch, which Faramir takes a look at, and he can tell it's clearly from the same designer collection.
Yeah, you're right.
He does seem a bit taken aback by the Lorien bit, right?
Oh, yeah. You passed through the land of Lorien? What?
Right. And then he says, well, it was once called Laurelin Dorinan. Now, this is a name that we also saw used by Treebeard.
Yep.
It's Quenya for Valley of Singing Gold.
That's right. Lothlorien, the name we know it more commonly by, is a compound of both Sindarin and Quenya. It's Sindarin Loth, or flower, and Quenya Lorien, or dreamland. I'm sure we mentioned that in one of the episodes on the chapter on Lothlorien.
I'm sure we must have, yeah.
And we probably also mentioned then that Tolkien translates that as either Lorien of the Blossom or the Dream Flower. And it's that latter translation that Treebeard uses when he's explaining the current name of the place.
Right. And I have to think that the fact that Faramir uses the name that Treebeard used of Laurelin Dorinan suggests that he's a bit more learned in lore than the average bear. You know, like most people would call it the Golden Wood or Lorien. You know, Faramir knows this ancient name of it, which is really
more
cool.
learned than the average bear. Hey, boo-boo.
He certainly is.
Yeah.
But he says, you know, it's been beyond the knowledge of men for a very long time.
For a very long time. And we know that it has been because we've seen the reactions of Boromir all the way back in Book 2 and Éomer in Book 3. But let's take a look. Let's consider how where both of them reacted to the mention of Lothlorien with fear and suspicion. Faramir here reacts with wonder. Why don't you tell us how Boromir reacted the first time?
Okay. Yeah, so this is Boromir's reaction from Book 2, Chapter 6, and where he says, "Against my will we passed under the shades of Moria to our loss, and now we must enter the Golden Wood, you say. But of that perilous land we have heard in Gondor, and it is said that few come out who once go in, and of that few none have escaped unscathed." "Say not unscathed, but if you say unchanged, then maybe you will speak the truth," said Aragorn. "But lore wanes in Gondor, Boromir, if in the city of those who once were wise, they now speak evil of Lothlorien."
Yeah, well, apparently only Boromir spoke evil of them because Faramir does have a different opinion. But
that's right, yep.
First, let's go back to Éomer's reaction. We would have done this one last season, Book 3, Chapter 3. The writer looked at them with renewed wonder, but his eyes hardened. "Then there is a lady in the Golden Wood, as old tales tell," he said. "Few escape her nets, they say. These are strange days. But if you have her favor, then you also are net weavers and sorcerers, maybe." He turned a cold glance suddenly upon Legolas and Gimli. "Why do you not speak, silent ones?" Yeah, they really had a very different reaction, huh?
Very different. Both Boromir and Éomer react with suspicion and fear, like you said, and they're just the mention of this place. It's not that they haven't heard of it. It's that they've heard of it and they are scared of it, or they think it's a place that smart people don't go.
Yeah.
And yet Faramir's reaction is different. Because here, you know, Frodo's revelation that he's been there actually puts Frodo in a new light for Faramir, and he wants to know more. He's actually curious now.
It's kind of a good light in a way. I mean,
right, exactly. It's like it's a curious wonder. It's a positive wonder. It's like, wow, you've been there. That's amazing. And he especially wants to know more as it relates to Boromir, especially since Boromir died so close to home, right?
Right. And Frodo explains the truth. There's just not much more to say. I mean, after all, he wasn't around for Boromir's death. He can't shed any light on the details. And he thinks that Faramir saw a vision as a result of that. You couldn't have seen the real thing. There's no way. And then he relates his experience in the Dead Marshes with the faces, basically saying, "Oh, I think I know what you saw because I saw faces in water too. I saw dead people." Sorry, now I see dead people.
I see dead people.
He saw dead people in the water, and he's thinking, well, that must be what you saw as well, Faramir.
Yeah, and that's interesting to me because when we talked about the Dead Marshes, we talked about, you know, are they just an illusion? I mean, they couldn't actually be real bodies, right? They must be some sort of illusion. And here we see Frodo apparently agreeing with us, or, you know, at least he thinks it was an illusion. But Faramir just flat out rejects the idea that seeing Boromir was an illusion on what seems to me like a pretty clear and reasonable basis.
Yeah.
Being that Sauron's works actually fill the heart with loathing, and that's not how I felt. I didn't have this revulsion to it. The sight of Boromir filled me with grief and pity. And that does seem like a reasonable distinction.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Loathing versus grief and pity. I mean, this does seem to be a very apparent distinction. But it puts me in mind of something. I can't help but recall the story of Gorlim. We have to go all the way back to the first age for this story. He returns from war. His house is plundered. His wife is gone. He ends up going into Barahir's service. This is Baron's father. But he would sometimes go back to his homestead and look for his wife, Elenel. And then we read back in the Silmarillion, on a time of autumn he came in the dusk of evening, and drawing near, he saw, as he thought, a light at the window. And coming warily, he looked within. There he saw Elenel, and her face was worn with grief and hunger, and it seemed to him that he heard her voice lamenting that he had forsaken her. But even as he cried aloud, the light was blown out in the wind. Wolves howled, and on his shoulders he felt suddenly the heavy hands of Sauron's hunters. Thus Gorlam was ensnared. Now, there's no mention here that this vision filled him with loathing. There is an explicit mention of grief, though it doesn't seem to be the same kind of grief, right? I concede that. It's the same word, but the grief and pity that Faramir is talking about is different than the grief that's mentioned here, because this is actually on the face of Elenel,
Right.
and not an experience that Gorlam has.
It's not Gorlam's own grief that he's experiencing. Yeah.
Exactly. But I do find it interesting that this vision didn't fill its intended victim with loathing. And it was the work of the same guy, right? It's the work of Sauron. At that point, though, instead of as the main evil, right? He's Morgoth's chief lieutenant at the point.
Right.
But yeah, certainly the Mirror of Dead Faces filled Frodo and Sam with loathing. So I don't know. Part of me thinks maybe Sauron's just lost his touch.
Maybe.
You know?
We know he's lost his touch to do other things, right? He can't appear in a fair visage himself anymore.
That's true. That's true.
I wonder if that's related, or maybe not. I don't know. Could just be a coincidence.
I think you might have just been trying to fill people with loathing with the Mirror of Dead Faces.
It could be. Yeah, it was sort of a defense.
I mean, Faramir's making this statement like it's a blanket statement. His works fill people with loathing.
Yeah, and that's just
sure that's always true.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you another thing I'm thinking of here is I'm thinking of Frodo's comment to Aragorn after seeing him, shortly after they'd met, just seeing how ragged Aragorn looked. He said, I think one of Sauron's spies would, seem fairer and feel fouler, if you understand. In other words, they might look good, but they would fill the heart with loathing. So
yeah, that
does kind of seem to track with Faramir's opinion, but I suppose Faramir probably is just expressing an opinion here,
Yeah, maybe.
Tolkien said something like this. I'm thinking of, it was letter 153 where he's talking about Treebeard, and he's talking about how sometimes my characters speculate and they're not always right.
Yeah.
And so that's probably what's going on here. Maybe this is just Faramir.
Yeah, kind of lumping in all of Sauron's works as filling people with loathing when he was, at least at one point, capable of creating works that didn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But who knows? Maybe he's not capable of creating those works anymore. It's an interesting topic. We don't really have any answers for it, but
true.
It is very interesting that, and I guess it doesn't really matter anyway, because we know this isn't
we know it's not a vision,
Sauron.
Right.
So, but it's a super interesting topic.
It is indeed. Now, before we get back to the discussion, we want to make sure you know that when you finish listening to this episode, the talk continues all night long at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
That's right. Our awesome listener community keeps the conversation going in all of our social media spaces, from our common room on Facebook to our Reddit community and Twitter and more.
On Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast, but be sure to follow the page and join the group to be in some great discussions.
And you can find us on Reddit at r/PrancingPonyPod. And we're also at Prancing Pony Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
And folks, if you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us by joining the Fellowship of the Podcast. When you do, you get a lot. An active Discord community that includes live episode recordings like we're doing right now, postscripts, episodes without digital ads, free merchandise, and a lot more.
A whole lot more, actually. You're also going to get live Discord hangouts, a chance to be a part of our Questions After Nightfall episodes, or even join us as a guest in the North Wing. So check out patreon.com/prancingponypod to support the show and become part of the Fellowship of the Podcast.
And if you enjoy the show, you can also help us out by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And now you can leave us a rating on Spotify as well. So please do that. And also, please recommend us to your friends.
All right, Alan, you are going to take us back to the text, and you are going to pick up right where I left off.
All right. Yet how could such a thing have happened in truth? Asked Frodo. For no boat could have been carried over the stony hills from Tol Brandir, and Boromir purposed to go home across the Entwash in the fields of Rohan. And yet how could any vessel ride the foam of the great falls and not founder in the boiling pools, though laden with water? I know not, said Faramir, but whence came the boat? From Lorien, said Frodo. In 3 such boats we rowed down Anduin to the falls. They also were of elven work. You passed through the hidden land, said Faramir. but it seems that you little understood its power. If men have dealings with the mistress of magic, who dwells in the golden wood, then they may look for strange things to follow. For it is perilous for mortal man to walk out of the world of this sun, and few of old came thence unchanged, 'tis said. Boromir, oh Boromir, he cried, what did she say to you, the lady that dies not? What did she see? What woke in your heart then? Why went you ever to Laurel and Dorinan, and came not by your own road, upon the horses of Rohan, riding home in the morning?
All right. Okay, so at the end of my reading, we had, as we discussed, Faramir talking about, this wasn't any illusion of Sauron's. And Frodo, at the beginning of your reading, he just can't imagine how this is even possible. Like, not that Boromir couldn't have died, but how could a boat have gotten here?
Right. Absolutely. It could not have been carried from Tol Brandir. That just no chance. And it certainly couldn't have survived the waterfall.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, it couldn't have done this, it couldn't have done that, therefore it can't be this boat. And Faramir's not entirely sure himself, I don't know, but he asks a question that he thinks may reveal the answer. Where did the boat come from?
Right. And Frodo, of course, can answer that one easily. He knows the boat came from Lorien, just like the cloak and the belt and so on. And he tells them we used 3 boats like that to get from Lorien to the Falls of Rauros. And that seems like a perfectly good answer for Faramir. That actually tells him quite a bit.
It pretty much solves the problem. He says, you went through the hidden land, but you still don't grasp the power that lives there. And then he says that if you deal with the mistress of magic, I love that phrase.
It is a great phrase, mistress of magic.
If you deal with her, strange things are going to happen. And then he says something that we're going to spend a little bit of time on. It is perilous for mortal man to go there.
Oh, yeah. I love this bit. Perilous for mortal man. And there's 3 things, folks, that we want to point out about the way Faramir describes this. So, first of all, he says it is perilous for mortal man, as you just said. Now, compare this with the rest of that exchange between Boromir and Aragorn from Book 2, Chapter 6. So there's the part that I read earlier, and then after that we get, "Then lead on," said Boromir, "but it is perilous." "Perilous indeed," said Aragorn, "fair and perilous, but only evil need fear it, or those who bring some evil with them."
That's right. That's absolutely right. And the second thing is that Faramir describes it, and I love this part of the description, walking out of the world of this sun. He is literally saying it's another world altogether, another dimension, if you will. Imagine, if you will, another dimension. One in which, as I'm serially, chain smoking.
Right, yeah. Imagine, if you will, a world of fairy where there's a fairy queen who'll give you a boat.
Where she's smarter than any entity on earth, but she calls her husband wise.
And she talks to you without saying a word.
And she mentally undresses you. All in the Twilight Zone. All right. Man. I'm not sure how much of that is going to survive to the
I don't
episode.
know, but it was fun.
But it was fun.
That's for our own personal use.
That's right. That's right. So he's literally saying it's another world altogether. It's the world of fairy. And remember that Tolkien himself calls fairy the Perilous Realm in On Fairy Stories. He says that the definition of fairy stories depends upon the nature of fairy, the perilous realm itself, and the air that blows in that country. I will not attempt to define that, Tolkien says, nor to describe it directly. It cannot be done. Fairy cannot be caught in a net of words, for it is one of its qualities to be indescribable, though not imperceptible.
Indeed.
Love that quote.
Yeah, I love that quote. And I also love Faramir's, bit about walking out of the world of this sun, because it also reminds me of another idea from On Fairy Stories. I mean, okay, maybe it's just Faramir waxing poetic, the idea that fairy has a different sun. But I don't know, folks, if you're thinking about the idea from On Fairy Stories about another world in which the green sun will be credible.
Oh, the green sun. Yeah.
I got to admit, I'm right there with you. I mean, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw this, was like another sun.
That's right.
Like the green sun. I mean, I'm sure it's nothing that literal, but again, you can see how Tolkien, we talked about this before, he wrote On Fairy Stories in between the composition of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And you can see how some of the ideas that he articulated in that essay do come out right here in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, very much so. But there's a third thing in that description that we want to talk about briefly. Faramir's last bit, few of old came thence unchanged. So remember when Aragorn corrected Boromir as they were heading into Lorien, this is after Gandalf's fall in Moria, and he talks about people not coming out unscathed. Aragorn corrects him and says, say not unscathed, but unchanged, just like Faramir said. And then he accused Boromir of lore waning in Gondor if people now think Lothlorien is evil.
Right. And as you said, Faramir says unchanged here. So he obviously understands the difference between unscathed and unchanged. He understands Lothlorien in a way that Boromir did not. I'm not saying he understands it completely.
Well, no. I don't know that a mortal man could.
No, but he has a greater understanding of it than Boromir does, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And he speaks of Galadriel with reverence instead of distrust, right? She's the mistress of magic, which, I mean, okay, that's kind of a neutral term. It's not criticism. It's not praise. But he's certainly not calling her a net weaver and sorcerer.
Right. It's a lot better than that, for sure.
It's a lot less accusatory,
Yeah. So, as it turns out, maybe lore hasn't waned in Gondor as much as Aragorn thinks. Maybe Faramir is just one of the few that's been paying attention.
Or one of the few that's been getting lessons, as we'll learn.
Yeah, it could be. Very well could be. So, I love this exchange. There's a whole lot in just that paragraph. And
isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, it just tells us so much about Faramir.
It really does.
But anyway, let's go back to the text, because then we see Faramir cry out to Boromir, asking questions that, he desperately wishes he could get answers to. What did Galadriel, the lady that dies not, what did she say to you? What did she see or foresee?
And what did that wake in Boromir's heart, right? And then why did you go there in the first place instead of coming home the way you went? Just come down through the Gap of Rohan.
To which Boromir's ghost is saying, because Aragorn told me to. I didn't want to go there.
I didn't want to, trust me. It wasn't my choice. Well, I like Boromir's answer, but let's answer these questions ourselves, right? We'll start with, what did she say? Sure. It appears, if we're looking at the text, that she didn't say much, if anything, directly to Boromir. There was, of course, the mental interrogation. And with that word, she held them with her eyes, and in silence looked searchingly at each of them in turn. None save Legolas and Aragorn could long endure her glance. Sam quickly blushed and hung his head. At length, the Lady Galadriel released them from her eyes, and she smiled. Do not let your hearts be troubled, she said. Tonight you shall sleep in peace. Then they sighed and felt suddenly weary, as those who have been questioned long and deeply, though no words had been spoken openly. And Boromir had something to say about that little wordless chat, right? To me, it seemed exceedingly strange. Maybe it was only a test, and she thought to read our thoughts for her own good purpose. But almost I should have said that she was tempting us and offering what she pretended to have the power to give. It need not be said that I refused to listen. The men of Minas Tirith are true to their word. But what he thought that the lady had offered him, Boromir did not tell.
Now, there was a brief conversation between Boromir and Celeborn about how to get where they're going, but there were no words from Galadriel herself.
Nope.
She doesn't even appear to have spoken to Boromir at the giving of the gifts. All that we get is, she turned then to Boromir, and to him she gave a belt of gold. That's it.
Yeah, that is absolutely it. She did not want to say anything to him, apparently. What did she see or foresee? Well, that too is a mystery. Boromir's comment suggests that she tempted him with something, at least that's how he perceived it. Something that he says she only pretended to have the power to give.
And then what did that wake in Boromir's heart? Well, it's safe to say that it at least stoked whatever fears and temptations he was already facing.
Yeah.
Enough so that he would try to take the ring as soon as he saw a real opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
But, of course, Faramir's not going to want to know that, I suppose.
No, he's not. But then we get to that last question. Why did Boromir go there instead of coming home via Rohan, other than the fact that he was just following orders? We talked about this way back at the Council of Elrond. The Gap of Rohan was closed to them because of Saruman's treachery, so they had to go over, or in this case, under the Misty Mountains and come down the Anduin. Now, could they have avoided Lothlorien? Yeah, sure, and Boromir wanted to do exactly that. Like we mentioned last week when discussing whether Boromir had truly accepted Aragorn's claim, we read that Aragorn stepped forward, but Boromir stood irresolute and did not follow. Is there no other way? He said. What other fairer way would you desire? Said Aragorn. A plain road, though it led through a hedge of swords, said Boromir. By strange paths has this company been led, and so far to evil fortune. Against my will we passed under the shades of Moria, to our loss. And now we must enter the Golden Wood, you say? Well, like I said, he didn't want to go there, but that is where he ended up. So
yes, it is.
That Faramir wants to know. Mm-hmm.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yes, they do. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get back to the text. Sean, I'm going to have you pick up about halfway through the next paragraph.
Okay. But lest you still should think my tale a vision, I will tell you this. The horn of Boromir at least returned in truth, and not in seeming. The horn came, but it was cloven in two, as it were by axe or sword. The shards came severally to shore. One was found among the reeds where watchers of Gondor lay, northwards below the infalls of the Entwash. The other was found spinning on the flood, by one who had an errand on the water. Strange chances, but murder will out, 'tis said. And now the horn of the elder son lies in two pieces upon the lap of Denethor, sitting in his high chair, waiting for news. And you can tell me nothing of the cleaving of the horn. No, I did not know of it, said Frodo. But the day when you heard it blowing, if your reckoning is true, was the day when we parted, when I and my servant left the company. And now your tale fills me with dread. For if Boromir was then in peril and was slain, I must fear that all my companions perished too. And they were my kindred and my friends. Will you not put aside your doubt of me and let me go? I am weary and full of grief and afraid. But I have a deed to do, or to attempt, before I too am slain. And the more need of haste if we two halflings are all that remain of our fellowship.
Oh, boy. Yeah. The more need of haste indeed. So let's get back to the beginning of that section. We'll actually talk briefly about what you didn't read, which is just that Faramir turns back to Frodo and suggests quietly, because remember, we're still in front of all of his men,
Right.
That Frodo could probably answer those questions, maybe even as well as we did, but he knows that this isn't the time or place.
That's right. And then he gives yet another reason why he thinks this was a real thing and not some illusion, and that's that the actual horn of Boromir came back, and in two pieces.
Yeah.
He says one was found up by the Entwash, and then the other was found somewhere else on the river.
Yeah, it doesn't really give us the geographical locations. I mean,
No.
found spinning on the flood tells us nothing. But we do get some detail in Tolkien's scheme that at least tells us when they were found. Hammond and Skull point out that the shards were found, one on February 28th and one on the 30th. And we know that Boromir was killed on the 26th and Faramir saw the boat on the 29th, so it all fits. And then he quotes a proverb, which I love. He quotes it from Canterbury Tales. Who knew?
Who knew Faramir read Canterbury Tales, right?
I know. I'm kind of impressed. Yeah, he must have paid attention in English lit class as a junior. Yeah, murder will out.
Yeah, or at least Tolkien was paying attention, which we know. Yeah, murder will out. This phrase is actually used twice in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. It appears once in the Prioress's Tale, when he writes, and I'm going to attempt the Middle English here, Mordre wol out, certain it will not faile, which is murder will out, certain it will not fail. And then it appears again in the Nun's Priest's Tale, where it's Mordre wol out, that se we die be die, which is murder will out, that see we day by day.
Yep. Man. I'm going to have you start reading things in Middle English every episode. Sean, are you okay with that?
Sure, why not? Takes me back to college. I actually had to do recitations of Chaucer in college in Middle English.
Oh, I thought you meant that you attended college when you were in the Middle Ages.
Oh, stop you.
Well, you kind of walked into that one. I had to say something. So
that's why you hate the Norman Conquest so much, because it happened
after
I was
you were
there
in
college, right?
I was there, Gandalf. 1,000 years ago.
I was there 1,000 years ago
when William
the
the
Normans
Conqueror
came across.
Came and he's speaking French to us now. Surrender. I have lots of horses. You should surrender now.
Please, I want somebody to do a dramatization of the Norman Conquest with like William the Conqueror as John Cleese's French knight.
Yes. Now go back to your English bedwetting kniggets.
Fetch la vache.
Fetch la vache? So Faramir, I think that's the second or third episode in a row we've got Fetch la vache in.
I think it is.
Unless that was in a P5. I could be remembering it correctly.
I don't know. We've been doing a lot of Fetch la vache.
We have. So. We've definitely got the cow. So he returns to asking Frodo,
I think that was a P5 because we were talking about
Oh, yes, you're right. It was.
They should have used the catapult. Yeah.
Yep. All the more reason, folks, for you to become a member of the Fellowship of the Podcast so you can listen to the episode postscripts. They are actually sometimes funnier than the episodes themselves.
That's right.
Even in like 10 minutes.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
So Faramir returns to asking Frodo, hey, can't you tell me something about how or why the horn was split? And Frodo, again, because he wasn't there when it happened, can say nothing definitive.
No, he can't. But I mean, he does give at least a little bit of information, which is, acknowledging that the day the horn was heard.
If Faramir remembers it correctly. Yeah.
Yeah. Then that would have been the day that he and Sam left the company.
Yeah.
And then that is when this fear hits him. It's like, oh, wait, if Boromir died then, well, then that's when the company was still all together. It's likely that the whole company were killed then, which does make sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, Boromir's, going to be the last man standing pretty much. Him and Aragorn, maybe, yeah.
You would think so. And I guess it's different from if the horn had been heard a few days later, because then maybe Boromir left and he went back home and he was alone.
Yeah.
But if it was the day they left, it's very likely that the whole company were there and were killed.
Yeah.
And he has this moment of, it's not hopelessness. It's just like this sort of, well, I guess it's this very Germanic kind of like, well, I guess I'm it now. So I'm going to have to do this all by myself. And that's it. And so that's when he begs Faramir, like, look, can you just set aside your doubt and just let me go?
And yeah, I mean, again, we are now quite possibly all that's left. So there's an increased sense of urgency to our mission. So
yeah,
Faramir,
absolutely.
go back and defend your city. You do your fate. I'll do my fate. Right.
You do you, Faramir.
Yeah.
Don't get in the way of my thing. I'm doing
Seriously,
my thing over here.
That is absolutely right. Now, Faramir admits this conversation isn't bringing him any comfort whatsoever, and it's certainly not answering any of his questions. But he does have something to say, at least, about Frodo's hasty conclusion, doesn't he?
He does, and I love this. He says, quite matter-of-factly, and this makes a lot of sense, look, Boromir wasn't prepared for a funeral by the orcs or the Haradrim or any other servants of Sauron. Like, somebody put him in that boat. Somebody brushed his hair and prepared him for a funeral. So that means that somebody from your company must still be alive.
I'm picturing orcs preparing his...
Hey, you should probably put this man in a boat and send him down the river. You got a brush? You got a hairbrush?
That's a funny image, but
Isn't
man,
it?
I don't want to imagine how orcs would actually prepare the body for
Neither do I. No, and what parts would be missing. Yeah, I don't want to know that at all.
All right. Well, on that lovely thought, why don't we go ahead and go back to the text, and you're picking up about 2 paragraphs after where I finished up.
All right. But whatever befell on the North March, you, Frodo, I doubt no longer. If hard days have made me any judge of men's words and faces, then I may make a guess at halflings. Though, and now he smiled, there is something strange about you, Frodo, an elvish air, maybe. But more lies upon our words together than I thought at first. I shall now take you back to Minas Tirith to answer there to Denethor, and my life will justly be forfeit if I now choose a course that proves ill for my city. So I will not decide in haste what is to be done. Yet we must move hence without more delay. He sprang to his feet and issued some orders. At once, the men who were gathered round him broke up into small groups, and went off this way and that, vanishing quickly into the shadows of the rocks and trees. Soon only Mablung and Damrod remained. Now you, Frodo and Samwise, will come with me and my guards, said Faramir. You cannot go along the road southwards, if that was your purpose. It will be unsafe for some days, and always more closely watched after this affray than it has been yet. And you cannot, I think, go far today in any case, for you are weary. And so are we. We are going now to a secret place we have, somewhat less than 10 miles from here. The orcs and spies of the enemy have not found it yet, and if they did, we could hold it long even against many. There we may lie up and rest for a while, and you with us. In the morning, I will decide what is best for me to do, and for you. All right.
All right. So here we see Faramir choosing not to decide. But he still has made a choice.
I knew that was coming. Probably because I wrote it, but yeah.
I would have written it if you hadn't.
I know. I was like, I mean, come on. He absolutely is deciding here not to decide. I love it. Total Rush reference, yeah. So he no longer doubts Frodo now. Regardless of how Boromir's death came about, he's convinced. And he even suggests that it is his own life experiences that have given him enough perception to determine that a man is lying. And he thinks that maybe this translates to his ability to read halflings as well. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then he mentions this something strange about Frodo. Says it could be an elvish heir.
An elvish heir. That is not the first time this sort of observation has been made about Frodo, is it?
No, it's not. It goes back to this idea that he's an elf friend, right?
Yeah. It's a great observation, though, because the people that normally would observe this
would be elves.
Have themselves been elves. Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And Faramir recognizes this, and I think it's because he's wise in lore. He's been taught, as we know. And, well, we know because we've read ahead, but we will find out later. Yeah. But for the first time, then, he acknowledges that he's actually taking a risk here. He knows that he should take Frodo and Sam back to Minas Tirith, bring them to Denethor.
He has standing orders to kill anybody who's here without the leave of Denethor. So even doing that is a stretch. But yeah.
And we know that he's not going to be able to rely on his father's love and support if he breaks the rules.
No, that's true.
He's not getting any favoritism from Dad here.
No.
He is literally risking his life if he makes the wrong decision.
Which explains why, because he is wise, he just decides not to make the decision right now. We can wait.
That is interesting because, again, we see some echoes of Éomer and Hama, remember from book 3.
Yeah.
Remember when they trusted their own judgment in similar situations involving visitors who didn't belong where they were. And they both used their own judgment, but they made choices, didn't they? We see Faramir hesitating a little bit, and maybe it's just because he really wants to take his time and think this through. Maybe it's just a Faramir thing.
I think it is. He is, as we've observed before, he is very wise. And we see him make really good decisions and think through those decisions. And in this case, he's, you know what? We're going to go back to a safe place because we do need to go. You're not going to be able to go anywhere anyway.
Delay the decision, but we can't delay leaving from this place.
That's right.
Yeah.
But even though we have to do those things now, we don't have to make the decision right now.
Right.
Yeah. So, they need to move from this place and quickly. So he issues the orders and the men start immediately breaking into groups and disappearing into the woods, heading off.
That's right. And then soon only the original 2 guards that were with Frodo and Sam, Mablung and Damrod, are left along with Faramir. And Faramir tells the hobbits what's going to happen next. He's like, you're coming with us.
That's right.
You can't keep going south for now.
No, it's going to be unsafe for a while, and for a long time going forward, it's going to be more closely watched. And even if it weren't for that, you're tired. You need some rest anyway, and so do my men.
Yep. So good news. We got a secret place. It's not too far from here. But it's not too close either, is it? I mean, he says less than 10 miles. That could still be a few hours walk.
It certainly could be. When he says less than 10 miles, I don't think he means it's 1.5 miles away.
No.
I think he means it's like 8.5, 9 miles.
It means like
something
8.5,
like
maybe 9, yeah.
Yeah. Cross country through the woods, trying to stay invisible. That's going to be a long
That's true.
Trip,
you're not going like, you can go maybe 3 miles an hour easily on the, on a road, but,
walking on a sidewalk someplace.
But this is not that.
No.
This is going to be several hours trek. But there's an advantage to this place. This secret place that we're going to, it's never been found, and it could be held for a long time, even if it were found.
That's right. And we'll see that next episode, or maybe it's the one after that when we'll get a really, really good layout of the place itself, of Henneth Anun.
Yep.
And then he says, you're going to rest there with us, and then I'm going to decide in the morning, and I love this, I'm going to decide what's best for me to do and what's best for you.
Oh, thanks.
I'm going to make the decision for you. That's right.
Great.
So we're going to skip a little bit of the beginning of their journey. I mean, yes, it's beautiful. Yes, they're heading towards the west, and we'll talk about the layout of the land here. But it's when Faramir starts talking to them again is where I want you to pick up.
I broke off our speech together, said Faramir, not only because time pressed, as Master Samwise had reminded me, but also because we were drawing near to matters that were better not debated openly before many men. It was for that reason that I turned rather to the matter of my brother, and let be Isildur's bane. You were not wholly frank with me, Frodo. I told no lies, and of the truth all I could, said Frodo. I do not blame you, said Faramir. You spoke with skill in a hard place, and wisely it seemed to me. But I learned or guessed more from you than your words said. You were not friendly with Boromir, or you did not part in friendship. You, and Master Samwise too, I guess have some grievance. Now I loved him dearly, and would gladly avenge his death. Yet I knew him well. Isildur's bane. I would hazard that Isildur's bane lay between you, and was a cause of contention in your company. Clearly it is a mighty heirloom of some sort. and such things do not breed peace among confederates, not if aught may be learned from ancient tales. Do I not hit near the mark?" "Near," said Frodo, "but not in the gold. There was no contention in our company, though there was doubt which way we should take from the Aemon Muil. But be that as it may, ancient tales teach us also the peril of rash words concerning such things as heirlooms. Ah, then it is as I thought. Your trouble was with Boromir alone. He wished this thing brought to Minas Tirith. Alas, it is a crooked fate that seals your lips who saw him last, and holds from me that which I long to know, what was in his heart and thought in his latest hours. Whether he erred or no, of this I am sure. He died well, achieving some good thing. His face was more beautiful even than in life."
Oh, I love that line, and I cannot wait to get to that part of the discussion. But we're going to start back at the beginning of that passage, actually even before that, with the beginning of the journey, right? Frodo recognizes this statement from Faramir about how you're going to come with us. You recognize it for what it is. It's an order. This isn't a request.
Oh, yeah.
He's there was nothing for Frodo to do. But at least he acknowledges that it seems wise, given how dangerous the land is.
Yeah. I mean, it's the best option anyway.
Yeah.
So.
What else was he going to do? Just head south randomly,
right.
Completely exhausted? No.
Right. So they do. They head out with the guards ahead and Faramir and the hobbits behind. And they're going down the hills towards the west, through woodlands.
Yep.
And they're talking quietly.
Indeed they are. And Faramir drops back a little bit with them while the guards are up ahead. And he confesses to Frodo that he intentionally, strategically, stopped talking about certain topics earlier, and not just because they were in a hurry. Yeah.
Yes. Remember last time we talked about how Faramir talks like a chess game, right?
Exactly. He's thinking moves ahead. Mm-hmm. And that's indeed what he did here. He realized where they were headed. He perceived that they were talking about things that were better not openly discussed. And that's why he shifted gears and turned to the topic of Boromir.
Yeah. This tells us so much about Faramir. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
Not only is he incredibly perceptive, as we've seen him to be, but he thinks on his feet, and he acts wisely.
He's an agile thinker. He acts wisely with the information that he has. Mm-hmm. He draws conclusions, usually the right ones, and then makes a decision based on that.
Yeah.
And it's the right one all the time. He's just on it.
It is.
It
is. And it's very much like watching a master chess player or a fencer, like we talked about last time.
Yeah.
And he does kind of maneuver Frodo into this corner where
he does.
He starts, okay, and here's these facts that I know, and here's these other facts that I know. And then he strikes a little bit. He starts making this, gentle accusation, like, you weren't completely honest with me.
Yeah.
But all this is ironic because Faramir was withholding some important things as well.
Yeah.
I mean, namely the fact that Boromir was his brother, which didn't come out until relatively late in the conversation last time.
Very, 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 very late in the conversation. Absolutely. And Frodo doesn't deny it, right? He doesn't deny that he was not completely truthful. He clarifies, look, I only spoke the truth. I just didn't speak all the truth, right? I just left some things out, which you did too, Faramir, he doesn't say.
Yeah.
But
no, he doesn't. But
this is all done gently because Faramir immediately makes a point of saying, look, I don't blame you.
Oh, yeah, no.
And in fact, Faramir commends him. This coming from a guy who really knows how to speak and listen and think moves ahead. He commends Frodo on speaking skillfully and wisely. I think that's very high praise indeed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would have been very different if he'd been like, oh, you lied to me. Now I'm going to kill you. It's,
that's a problem.
He recognizes what Frodo is doing. There's a little bit of a kindred spirit recognition here,
Yes.
like, oh, you can play this game too. And I think that's really cool. But then he also points out that he was able to draw some conclusions or guesses, but well-educated guesses based on what Frodo said, even if he was trying to keep things secret.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, he figured out that Frodo and Boromir either weren't friends or they didn't part as friends, which is an
pretty
understatement.
accurate. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. He's picked out that there must be some grievance between Frodo and Sam and Boromir.
Right.
And then, of course, we've got this, yet I knew him well, which speaks volumes. I have to just point that out.
It does. It really does.
Like, I loved him, but I knew him well.
Yeah.
And I got to ask, what do you think Faramir really thought of his brother? I mean, obviously he loved him, but, he must have known his flaws. He must have known he was, difficult, stubborn, proud. I mean, he is all of those things.
He is indeed all of those
So
things. Yeah.
I love that bit. Yet I knew him well. I kind of like, my jaw dropped when I read that. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Ouch. Yeah. I mean, I was just talking about him, and I know he's dead, and we don't speak ill of the dead, but I knew him well.
Well, look, I knew him. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll get to more of that later, right? And he'll actually kind of call out some strengths and weaknesses. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Faramir goes so far then as to guess another thing. He guesses that Isildur's bane was a cause of contention. And he goes so far as to suggest that Isildur's bane must be a mighty heirloom. And then he casually mentions that objects like that often cause conflict amongst allies, historically speaking.
So, am I right or am I right?
Yeah, pretty much. Right. Here's my guess. I'm pretty much on the nose, right? Yeah.
And Frodo concedes, like, he's close. He's really close.
Really close, yeah.
But
Getting
not
warmer.
quite.
Getting warmer.
Getting warm. But he's not quite. And
no.
I really like the way Frodo puts this. He uses this archery analogy.
Yeah. Well, Faramir starts the archer analogy.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Near
Do I
mark.
not hit near the mark? That's true. Faramir starts the archery analogy. And then Frodo says near, but not in the gold. Of course, the gold is the smallest circle on an archery target, right?
Yeah,
it's
the bullseye.
It's around the bullseye. Yeah.
That's right.
And then Frodo says, like, it wasn't contention that existed in the company so much as doubt regarding where to go.
Yeah. And then he flips the script on Faramir, saying, history also teaches us not to talk rashly about such things, right, as heirlooms. And I want to take a second to talk about that a little bit. First, let's talk about, well, I say first, there's really only one thing I'm thinking of here. It also caused conflict amongst allies, historically speaking, and it also taught us that we shouldn't speak rashly about heirlooms. Can you think of another time in, let's say ancient tales when we encounter the peril of rash words concerning mighty heirlooms? Oh,
I think we might be able to think of one.
I think you can. How about when a famous craftsman and his 7 sons vowed to pursue with vengeance and hatred to the ends of the world, Vala, demon, elf, or man as yet unborn, or any creature, great or small, good or evil, that time should bring forth unto the end of days, whoso should hold or take or keep a Silmaril from their possession. I'd say that qualifies as rash.
Those are some rash words for sure.
They really are.
Those are the kind of words you can regret for 6,000 years.
Or more. Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a thought really, but I don't think it's an accident. Frodo is almost certainly likely to have heard about the oath from Bilbo, who knows a lot about the first age.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And once again, Frodo has unintentionally revealed something to Faramir, and he picks it up. Oh, okay, so your trouble wasn't with the company as a whole.
Frodo needs to stop talking because everything he says gives Faramir more clues. He's like, aha.
Again, he is cornered on the chessboard. Boromir is just like closing in.
Yeah.
It was just Boromir that you had a problem with.
Ding, ding,
and
ding. Yep.
Since you talked about having some doubt as to the direction to go, that must mean that Boromir wanted to bring it to Minas Tirith, and you wanted to go somewhere else.
So perceptive. He just reads right through the stuff and like lands on the answer. It's like he's got a cheat sheet and some sort of an answer key. He knows the whole story. He's just trying to see what he can get.
I want Faramir on my team next time I do an escape room or something. This guy is going to pick up on all the clues. He is not going to miss anything.
No, and he will never go down the wrong path. Everything he chooses is going to be the right answer.
True.
So, yeah. And he regrets then that Frodo can't tell him more, right? It's what does he say? Something about, it is a crooked fate that seals your lips, right? So he regrets that Frodo's not able. He doesn't blame him, but he regrets that Frodo's not able to tell him more, but especially those things that would have been particularly important to Faramir, right? What Boromir was thinking and feeling in his final hours. That's what he cares about.
I love this because he shows such understanding for Frodo.
He does.
He doesn't try to force Frodo to give him information. And he could, right? Because he's maneuvered the conversation in such a way he could probably get Frodo to reveal to him anything that he wants him to reveal.
Well, and he's got 300 men with
there's that too. Yeah.
Swords and tall bows.
Yeah. But he doesn't try to force Frodo. He doesn't get angry that Frodo won't tell him. He understands. He understands that Frodo has to withhold some things from him.
Yeah.
And it's like we said last time, he's very stoic. He's very accepting of,
yeah, you're right.
Just reality as it is. Like, okay.
You don't see him getting frustrated by this fact. I mean, he's disappointed. He wishes it were otherwise, but he's not angry about it. He's not happy. I can't understand why you won't tell me.
He doesn't even blame Frodo. He blames fate. It is a crooked fate that seals your lips.
Right.
I understand that this is the way it has to be. I'm just
Yeah.
not happy about it.
But then we get to this part that I really wanted to get to. Faramir points out something that I love this, as it reflects what I've said about Boromir and, what we talked about Boromir here on the show. Whether he erred or no, of this I am sure. He died well, achieving some good thing. And boy, did he.
Yes, he did. He
Yeah.
had that redemption. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
And I love that Faramir can see that on his face. That last little line about how his face was even more beautiful than it was when he was alive.
That actually reminds me, I want to go back to that because, and I didn't put this in our notes, but when he died, there was a moment there. After he died, he smiles, right?
The last thing he did, he smiled. He smiled?
He says, "Farewell, Aragorn. Go to Minas Tirith, save my people. I failed." And Aragorn says, "No, you've conquered. Few have gained such a victory. Be at peace. Minas Tirith shall not fall." Boromir smiled.
Yeah.
And then Aragorn asks him another question. Was Frodo there? Which way did they go? And Boromir had died at that point. Boromir did not speak again.
Yep.
Yeah. That connects directly to that moment, that his
It
face
does.
was more beautiful than it was when he was alive.
It's such a poignant thing to say, and it's so powerful to think that Faramir can recognize. And you have to imagine that this is, well, he smiled. We know he smiled,
Yeah.
so Faramir's got to imagine this is probably the happiest that he sees Boromir. Like he
Yeah.
knows that Boromir died happy.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's a really, really beautiful moment.
It truly is. I love it. One of my favorite moments right there.
Yeah.
It must give Faramir such a sense of peace to know that about his brother.
I think it probably does. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, because he again, he accepts reality. He accepts that, his brother died and that's done. There's no changing that now, but at least his brother died well.
Yeah, having achieved some good thing.
Yeah. Well, with that, it is time for us to dive into our last reading of the episode, and I'm going to hand it to you for that, sir.
All right, then. But Frodo, I pressed you hard at first about Isildur's bane. Forgive me. It was unwise in such an hour and place. I had not had time for thought. We had had a hard fight, and there was more than enough to fill my mind. But even as I spoke with you, I drew nearer to the mark, and so, deliberately, shot wider. For you must know that much is still preserved of ancient lore among the rulers of the city that is not spread abroad. We of my house are not of the line of Elendil, though the blood of Numenor is in us. For we reckon back our line to Mardale, the good steward, who ruled in the king's stead when he went away to war. And that was King Eärnur, last of the line of Anarion, and childless, and he came never back. And the stewards have governed the city since that day, though it was many generations of men ago. And this I remember of Boromir as a boy, when we together learned the tale of our sires and the history of our city, that always it displeased him that his father was not king. How many hundreds of years needs it to make a steward a king if the king returns not, he asked. Few years, maybe, in other places of less royalty, my father answered. In Gondor, 10,000 years would not suffice. Alas, poor Boromir. Does that not tell you something of him? It does, said Frodo. Yet always he treated Aragorn with honor. I doubt it not, said Faramir. If he was satisfied of Aragorn's claim, as you say, he would greatly reverence him. But the pinch had not yet come. They had not yet reached Minas Tirith or become rivals in her wars. But I stray. We in the house of Denethor know much ancient lore by long tradition, and there are, moreover, in our treasuries many things preserved, books and tablets writ on withered parchments, yea, and on stone, and on leaves of silver and of gold in diverse characters. Some none can now read, and for the rest few ever unlock them. I can read a little in them, for I have had teaching. It was these records that brought the Grey Pilgrim to us. I first saw him when I was a child, and he has been twice or thrice since then. The Grey Pilgrim, said Frodo. Had he a name? All right, then.
And we are going to painfully stop there.
Yeah, I know. Nobody's going to love where we ended.
No, but at least we've got some more to talk about before we're done here.
We do. Plenty more.
So, going back to the beginning of the passage you just read, this is something pretty amazing. Faramir actually asks for forgiveness.
Yes.
For pressing hard on the one thing that he now knows Frodo can't speak openly about, which of course is Isildur's bane.
That's right.
He acknowledges that it was unwise. It wasn't the right time or place for that.
That's right. And it's funny, he kind of acknowledges that in this particular case, he wasn't playing his word chess very well, right? He hadn't had time to consider it. They just had this big battle and all that. So he goes in and starts asking the questions. And only as that interrogation goes on does he realize that as he's questioning Frodo, he was getting too close. And so he backed off.
Right. And then he goes on here to talk about the ancient lore among the rulers that his men wouldn't know about.
No. I mean, the line of the stewards may not be the House of Elendil, he says. That's part of the ancient lore. But it is still Númenorian. And our line goes back to Mardil, the good steward to King Eärnur. And
yes,
like we talked about last week, that's nearly 1,000 years ago. So let's take the Wayback Machine and go back 1,000 years.
To when Bane meant something that kills you.
That's right.
And not just homework. Yeah. So sidebar on the Stewards of Gondor, right? Because we actually wanted to talk about this a little bit last time, but we knew we just had too much already. Back before then, as Appendix A14 tells us, the House of the Stewards was called the House of Hurin. Hold that thought. For they were descendants of the steward of King Menardil, 3rd Age 1621 to 34, Hurin of Aemon Arnon, a man of high Númenorian race. After his day, the kings had always chosen their stewards from among his descendants, and after the days of Pelennor, the stewardship became hereditary as a kingship, from father to son or nearest kin. So, no, it wasn't that Hurin, it was another Hurin of Aemon Arnon. But just to give you a sense of time here, the Hurin that we're talking about here served King Menardil between the 3rd Age 1621 and 1634, as I said, which was more than 400 years before Mardil was Eärnur's steward.
That's right. So just a reminder about Eärnur's disappearance. Let's read from earlier in that same section of the appendices. Eärnur was a man like his father in valor, but not in wisdom. He was a man of strong body and hot mood, but he would take no wife, for his only pleasure was in fighting or in the exercise of arms. I'm thinking tricep extensions, curls,
I'm sure. Yeah, he's got to exercise those arms.
Exercise of arms, swords and things.
I know. What are you doing, Eärnur? I'm exercising my arms, man.
That's right.
Gonna get these biceps swole.
Sun's out, guns out, man.
That's right, man.
All right. So Eärnur and his guns. His prowess was such that none in Gondor could stand against him in those weapon sports in which he delighted, seeming rather a champion than a captain or king, and retaining his vigor and skill to a later age than was then usual. When Eärnur received the crown in 2043, the king of Minas Morgul challenged him to single combat, taunting him that he had not dared to stand before him in battle in the north. For that time, Mardil the steward restrained the wrath of the king. Minas Anor, which had become the chief city of the realm since the days of King Telemnar and the residence of the kings, was now renamed Minas Tirith as the city ever on guard against the evil of Morgul.
And then we go on to read, Eärnur had held the crown only 7 years when the Lord of Morgul repeated his challenge, taunting the king that to the faint heart of his youth he had now added the weakness of age. Then Mardil could no longer restrain him, and he rode with a small escort of knights to the gate of Minas Morgul. None of that riding were ever heard of again. It was believed in Gondor that the faithless enemy had trapped the king, and that he had died in torment in Minas Morgul. But since there were no witnesses of his death, Mardil the good steward ruled Gondor in his name for many years.
And finally, so it was that no claimant to the crown could be found who was of pure blood, or whose claim all would allow, and all feared the memory of the kin strife, knowing that if any such dissension arose again, then Gondor would perish. Therefore, though the years lengthened, the steward continued to rule Gondor, and the crown of Elendil lay in the lap of King Eärnil in the houses of the dead, where Eärnur had left it. Oh,
that's right.
Oh, man, that story.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a very sad story. And to think that now Gondor has just kind of been in this holding pattern for 1,000 years, Yeah,
kingless limbo, yeah.
And it's like, what are you waiting for? Like, no king is coming back.
No.
Well,
no.
I guess maybe one is, but we don't know that yet.
Well, that's true.
I don't know. It's a brutal story, but
it really is.
Back to the text, Faramir says that ever since then, the stewards have governed the city in the absence of a king.
That's right.
What do you make of the use of the word govern?
Well, it's different than ruled. I think that's the point. He
it
specifically doesn't use the word ruled.
I know.
Yeah.
We should look into that. Maybe for the P5, I should look into govern versus rule, see if I can get some word nerdery on those.
Okay.
I mean,
That'd be
I
good.
recognize the appendix uses rule.
Yeah.
Says the steward ruled Gondor. But yeah, Faramir doesn't. I think that's interesting.
I think he sees the role a little differently because we'll see some things about, from the appendices that talk about the perspective of the stewards themselves for most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good catch. We'll look into that a little bit more. But then
Okay.
he remembers, Boromir as a kid, right?
Yeah.
And Boromir's displeasure at the fact that their dad, Denethor, wasn't a king.
He makes what sounds like a reasonable argument, really. How many centuries before a steward becomes the king if the king doesn't come back?
Not terribly different from what I just now said.
Right, exactly. And Faramir relates Denethor's answer, which I find intriguing. In Gondor, 10,000 years would not suffice. Now, this sounds noble of Denethor. Of course, we see the true Denethor later when he refuses to even consider a claim from the line of Isildur, and he says, I will not step down to be the dotard chamberlain of an upstart. Even were his claim proved to me, still he comes but of the line of Isildur. I will not bow to such a one, last of a ragged house, long bereft of lordship and dignity. I can't wait to read that in his voice when I actually have come up with his voice. But that's a great line. But the point is, he would not, even if the claim is proved, he's not going to surrender the kingship to him. Yeah.
No, but at the same time, you would think, then why doesn't he ever make a claim to the kingship himself? Obviously he doesn't want to I guess that's true. Yeah, because the appendices do make it clear that the stewards did have plenty of power as it was, right?
Yeah.
It says that each new steward indeed took office with the oath to hold rod and rule in the name of the king until he shall return.
Right.
But these soon became words of ritual little heeded, for the stewards exercised all the power of the kings.
Mm-hmm.
Yet many in Gondor still believed that a king would indeed return in some time to come, and some remembered the ancient line of the north, which it was rumored still lived on in the shadows. But against such thoughts the ruling stewards hardened their hearts. Power is hard to surrender once you've had it for so long, right?
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's the whole reason why Denethor never bothered to make a claim for the throne. He doesn't need it. He has all the power of a king.
And I think, actually, it probably works in his favor that he doesn't lay claim to the kingship. Because if he did, then that's going to cause a crisis.
Right.
As long as he doesn't, he's got all the powers of a king.
Yeah.
And he can go on ruling in the king's name, and he's got legitimacy that way.
But none of the drawbacks and none of the risks.
Right. But if he were to try and say, okay, well, it's been 1,000 years. We're just going to go ahead and make the stewardship a kingship. Well, that's going to cause some problems. He's going to have some political problems then.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's very interesting.
It is. Well, so then Faramir acknowledges that Boromir's displeasure at this fact really reveals something about Boromir's character. And
oh, yeah.
It's interesting. Frodo agrees, but then he points out how Boromir had always treated Aragorn honorably. And it's something that Faramir says he would do if he were satisfied of the claim. And that's something we talked about last week, huh?
Yeah, it suggests that there must have been some moments off screen, as it were, that we don't see in the text, where Frodo must have witnessed Boromir showing Aragorn that he was satisfied with the claim. We talked about that. It never really seemed to materialize in the book that we read.
No.
Until possibly Boromir's death, like we talked about, where he might sort of acknowledge a bit.
But it must have happened, just not in the text. That's the only thing I can think of here. Because Frodo, this is now, the second or third time where he points out that Boromir accepted his claim, Boromir treated Aragorn honorably, Boromir believed him, that sort of thing.
Right.
So, but Faramir points out something quite true, and again, also insightful, I think, about Boromir's character and Boromir's strengths and weaknesses. He hadn't become rivals with Boromir yet. Aragorn hadn't come to Minas Tirith, at which point he and Boromir are both going to be vying for who succeeds Denethor.
That's a very interesting what if.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if they had both come to Gondor? It would be exactly that. Yeah, they would both be vying for it. Aragorn, after the War of the Ring, Aragorn makes his claim to the throne, and
Boromir's got to decide. If Denethor's dead, Boromir's got to decide whether he accepts that claim or not.
But yeah, I mean, who knows what Boromir would decide? Having traveled with Aragorn, having fought alongside Aragorn.
Yeah, you'd like to think that he would say okay.
Would that make him loyal to Aragorn? I'm not so sure.
I'm not convinced either. I mean, Boromir was his father's son very much.
Right.
And I'm sure that he'd heard lots of negative things about the line of Isildur and things along those lines. Because as we know, Denethor later will reveal that he knew what Gandalf was up to.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it very well may be that he knew about Aragorn before Boromir even went to Imladris. That I don't know, though.
Possibly. I don't know if there's any reason to believe that, but he definitely knew about him later.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, Faramir then returns to his discussion of the ancient lore. So talk to us a little bit about that lore.
Oh, I love this. I want to hang out in this library. He talks about how they've kept books and writings, even on old parchment and stone, on leaves of metal, in different scripts, diverse characters.
Right.
And some of them can't be read by anybody, and very few people can read any of them.
Yeah. But I can read a few because I've been taught. And that's when he mentions the Grey Pilgrim, somebody that he first met as a child and has seen only 2 or 3 times since. But that prompts Frodo to ask the obvious question that has become our episode cliffhanger.
That's right.
The Grey Pilgrim? The Grey Pilgrim?
Oh, yeah, I remember. Elderly chap. Big grey beard, pointy hat. Not seen him for 6 months.
So,
That's right.
while Barliman may be a bit clueless about the Grey Pilgrim, he did still manage to get a question or two to us. Sean, what do we have?
All right, well, this is a first.
Yeah.
Barliman has actually sent us an audio question. So let's take a listen to that.
Hi, guys. It's Jennifer from California. Do you know anything specific on where Tolkien's inspiration came from for the brotherly relationship between Boromir and Faramir? In Windows on the West, there are a couple places where it's really clear that Faramir and Boromir were close. In fact, Faramir says, "Whether he erred or no, of this I am sure. He died well, achieving some good thing." And I just love that. Can you tell me anything you might know beyond the text? Thanks.
All right.
All right. Well, that is a great question, Jennifer. Thank you for that. What do you make of it, Alan?
Well, we looked. We looked really, really deeply into this one. We even brought in one of our research assistants, Tanya, to help us dig. Truth be told, there's just nothing to go on in terms of inspiration for the brotherly relationship between Faramir and Boromir.
Yeah.
We had thought that maybe Tolkien's relationship with his own brother, Hilary, would be an inspiration. And while that's certainly still possible, there are no signs, clear or even vague, that would make that the case. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of these brotherly connections and let you draw your own conclusions. So Sean, why don't you tell us a bit about Tolkien's brother Hilary and the relationship they had?
Okay.
Yeah.
So Hilary Arthur Ruel Tolkien was Tolkien's younger brother. He was born February 17th, 1894, just a few weeks after Ronald Tolkien had turned 2 years old. That meant that he was barely a year old when he, Ronald, and their mother Mabel sailed back to England, which is where they remained after the boy's father died in 1896.
Mm-hmm.
Both Humphrey Carpenter and Hammond and Skull tell us that Ronald and Hilary were close.
Yeah.
Not surprising, given their upbringing. It was just the 2 boys and their mom, so they're going to be a very tightly knit family.
Yeah.
Hilary went to St. Philip's School for a while, like Ronald did, but then he failed his entrance exam for King Edward's School. Carpenter cites a letter that Mabel wrote about that, where she said it wasn't her fault, or that he didn't know the things, but he is so dreamy and slow at writing. Well, after Mabel's passing, he did eventually join his older brother at King Edward's, but while Hammond and Skull say he usually maintained a respectable rank within his class, he was never really quite the scholar his brother was. But,
Well,
come on, who is?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a pretty high bar. That's brutal. Yeah.
So after leaving school, Hilary worked in his uncle's family business, but he eventually chose farming as his way of life.
Yeah.
Now, just like his brother, he did go to war. He enlisted in the 16th Battalion of the Royal Warwickshire Regiment and served 3 years in France as a bugler and a stretcher bearer.
Mm-hmm.
He was wounded at least twice in the war, once in April 1916 near Arras, and in the summer of 1917 as he was carrying supplies over the Passchendaele Ridge near Ypres. And Tolkien's wife Edith was designated his next of kin, so she's actually the one who received the telegrams each time he was hurt.
Okay, so Tolkien would have known then through Edith, presumably through letters, right?
Right, yeah. And after the war, he bought an orchard and a garden near Evesham. He got married, had 3 sons, and he settled down into life as a farmer.
That's right.
But Ronald and his family did visit him there regularly.
Mm-hmm.
The Carpenter says in his biography that after Ronald and Hilary had both become widowers, so this would have been very late in Tolkien's life, they saw each other more often and that they resembled each other far more than they had ever done in their youth. The 2 of them would spend their days watching cricket and tennis on TV and drinking whiskey.
I love that. Wow.
Part of that sounds great to me.
Yeah, it's cricket and tennis, huh? All
Yeah.
right. I'll just,
Yeah. I don't know. I actually thought Tolkien hated cricket too. This
I
is kind of a
know.
surprise to me.
That was ringing a bell with me as well. When we talked about cricket,
Yeah.
there were some letters that it explained he didn't like the game, but he must have loved his brother enough to watch cricket with him, I guess.
Maybe so, yeah. Or maybe he just loved the whiskey. Honestly,
Maybe.
I would, if the whiskey's good enough, I'll watch some cricket for sure.
Fair enough.
So anyway, that's Ronald and Hillary. Alan, what do you have on the other pair of brothers here, Boromir and Faramir?
Well, I doubt they spent any time watching cricket and drinking whiskey, but I mean, who could blame them if they did?
Nope, for sure.
I confess, though, I love my obscure sports, but I still don't get cricket. And I know I'm probably going to get emails about that, but yeah, I just don't. But let me read from Appendix A, Gondor and the Heirs of Anarion, to give us a bit more about Boromir and Faramir and their relationship. When Denethor became steward, 2984, he proved a masterful lord, holding the rule of all things in his own hand. He said little. He listened to counsel and then followed his own mind. He had married late, 2976, taking his wife Finduilas, daughter of Adrahil of Dol Amroth. She was a lady of great beauty and gentle heart, but before 12 years had passed, she died. Denethor loved her, in his fashion, more dearly than any other, unless it were the elder of the sons that she bore him. Okay, so here's the thing. When we look at those dates and we see that, he was married for 12 years before she died, Boromir was 10 years old and Faramir was only 5 when their mother passed away. So that certainly would suggest in some ways the parallel maybe to Tolkien and to Hillary in the sense that they were both young when a parent died. In this case, it would, it's their mother that passes. Their father died when he was a baby, but they were pretty close to that age when their mother died. I think 11 and 8, I want to say, or somewhere in that range, 11 and 9, something.
So it's pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, so they were of similar age when their mom passed away. So that's possibly a link. We then, of course, learn that it's after her death that Denethor dares to look into the Palantir, gaining knowledge but growing in both pride and despair. So then fast forward a bit and return to the appendices. Time drew on to the War of the Ring, and the sons of Denethor grew to manhood. Boromir, 5 years the elder, beloved by his father, was like him in face and pride, but in little else. Rather, he was a man after the sort of King Eärnur of old, taking no wife and delighting chiefly in arms, fearless and strong, but caring little for lore, save the tales of old battles. Faramir the younger was like him in looks, but otherwise in mind. He read the hearts of men as shrewdly as his father, but what he read moved him sooner to pity than to scorn. He was gentle in bearing, and a lover of lore and of music, and therefore by many in those days his courage was judged less than his brother's. But it was not so, except that he did not seek glory in danger without a purpose. He welcomed Gandalf at such times as he came to the city, and he learned what he could from his wisdom, and in this, as in many other matters, he displeased his father. Yet between the brothers there was great love, and had been since childhood, when Boromir was the helper and protector of Faramir. No jealousy or rivalry had arisen between them since, for their father's favor or for the praise of men. It did not seem possible to Faramir that anyone in Gondor could rival Boromir, heir of Denethor, captain of the White Tower. And of like mind was Boromir. Yet it proved otherwise at the test. And of like mind was Boromir. Oh, man. Ouch.
Big brother, you're the greatest. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Yes, it's true. Oh, man.
Oh, man.
Enough about me. What do you think about me?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining him as Maui, from
Oh,
Moana.
yeah. Yeah. What can I say except you're
you're
welcome?
welcome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we did kind of think, let's look into Tolkien's own relationship with his brother. Maybe there's some inspiration there, but it really doesn't sound like there is any. I mean,
Outside of maybe the fact that their mom died around the same age.
yeah,
But you look at the relationship between the two? No.
no.
Tolkien's not going to be this big, strong fighter guy and, Faramir's the wise one.
And in fact, Tolkien identified with Faramir. And
Right.
so,
We talked about that last week. If there's any character in the book that's me, it's Faramir, except that I lack courage. Right.
exactly. And he identified with the younger brother, even though Tolkien himself was the older brother. So
Right.
it really doesn't seem like there's any kind of template there for the relationship between Faramir and Boromir.
No.
I mean, maybe when he's thinking about the love that Faramir has for his brother, I imagine Tolkien probably had a similar love for his own brother, but it doesn't really seem like there's any there's not really any specific details that Tolkien was taking from his own life for these two. I think he was just, I don't know. We don't really know where it came from.
I think you hit on it there. There's no specific details, but there are some things that make you think of it. Like the line about there was great love between them and had been since childhood when Boromir was the helper and protector of Faramir. Yeah, there would have been a time where Tolkien was certainly the helper and protector of Hillary.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's a good point.
They would have shared great love all the way since childhood because, like you mentioned in the biographical material, they would have been a very tightly knit family.
Mm-hmm.
After their father's death, they end up sort of being isolated there after their mother's conversion to Catholicism, which kind of breaks them off from a lot of their family. The three of them become very, very close. And so I'm sure there's a lot of that love and that closeness and that, mutual support and care, but you can't really draw any direct connection to the Faramir-Boromir relationship.
Not beyond the fact that any writer who has a sibling who writes a sibling relationship is probably going to be thinking of their own life. I mean, there's going to be something that he's going to think of, but there's just nothing specific there that we can really hang our hats on.
No, and I can't imagine that he thought either himself or Hillary would think that they were so great as Boromir thought he was.
No.
And of like mind was Boromir.
No,
what a line that is. I still love that. And it's one
hilarious.
of those things you almost have to read out loud in the right tone.
Yeah. But that was an absolutely awesome question.
It was. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Well, Alan, do we have time for one more?
I think we do. Back in episode 236, not too long ago, we were introduced to Ithilien, a land that reminded us of Greece and the Mediterranean. So it's a good time to bring this one in from Sean H. in Staffordshire, UK, who writes in, as we all know, Tolkien's legendarium is firmly rooted in the mythology of the North. However, as an educated man of the early 20th century, it is unquestionable that he would have come into contact with and read the Iliad, the Odyssey, and wider classical mythology. Furthermore, we know he had mastered the Latin and Greek languages by a very young age. So after all that, my question is, what, if any, was the influence of Greek mythology on the legendarium? Do you think Tolkien took anything from a Greek mythology that he was surely very familiar with and used it within his works? Well, Sean, you are the classics guy on staff here at the PPP. What do you have for us on this?
I love this question. Absolutely
great
question.
Knew
Sean.
You would, yeah.
I've been really into this stuff lately, and you're absolutely right, Sean. It is unquestionable that Tolkien knew his classics. Obviously, he was a product of the British school system of his day. He would have spent a lot of time reading Homer, Virgil, Thucydides, many others. But more than that, we know that he mastered Greek well enough to perform plays by Aristophanes in the original Greek.
In the original Greek.
When he was in high school.
Yeah,
at
pretty
King
impressive
Edward's
stuff. Yeah.
And he didn't just study the classics because he had to. He actually had a deep appreciation for the classics. He loved it.
That's right. He did. And he definitely knew his Iliad and Odyssey. He makes a few references to Homer and to Homeric tradition in his letters, including letter number 142 to Robert Murray, in which he says, I was brought up in the classics and first discovered the sensation of literary pleasure in Homer. Also, being a philologist, getting a large part of any aesthetic pleasure that I am capable of from the form of words, and especially from the fresh association of word form with word sense. I've always best enjoyed things in a foreign language, or one so remote as to feel like it, such as Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, he did love the classics, and that's why he was actually reading in classics, or we would say majoring in classics, with a specific concentration in Greek philology when he first started at Oxford University in 1911. Now, it was only a couple of years, it was 1913, before he switched to English. And the reason he did that, according to Humphrey Carpenter in the biography, was that he was bored with Latin and Greek authors. So,
oh, man.
I guess when you've mastered the classics at the, when you're in high school, I guess you're going to be bored with it by the time you get to college.
Well, what sort of job are you going to get if that's what you study, right? You major in Greek philology. I mean, you major in classics with a minor in Greek philology.
I mean, the same job he ended up getting, which was
the professorship of, I know.
Yeah, but
that's the point.
But yeah, I mean, it's very clear to me and to many actual scholars of Tolkien and classics as well.
Which would notably not be us, just to be clear.
That Tolkien did not give up on classical studies when he made the switch to English. In fact, there was a book published just last year called Tolkien and the Classical World, which is all about ancient Greek and Roman influences in Tolkien's work.
A great book, by the way. I enjoyed it. But more importantly, if you are a Tolkien Society member, check out the most recent issue of Malorn, which includes a short review of Tolkien in the classical world written by none other than my co-host.
I did. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It is a great book. I was very proud to have a chance to review it for Malorn.
Yeah.
Because it was such a fantastic book, edited by a scholar named Hamish Williams, contributions from over a dozen scholars on different Greco-Roman influences.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of them.
There are.
Not just mythology, but history, philosophy, and even more. But since Sean asked about mythology specifically, I'll limit my answer to mythology and focus on influences.
Fair.
There.
Well, that and because our podcast can only go for another 15 or 20 minutes.
There's that too. Just seriously, if you're interested in more than that, go to our library, order a copy of the book. You won't regret it. It's such a cool book.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of the mythology things that I can think of just from having read the book recently, there's a chapter in the book all about how the way human beings interact with the gods in the Iliad and the Aeneid, how that reflects in the way Tolkien portrays relationships between the Valar and elves and men in the Silmarillion.
That's right.
There's another chapter describing how the fall of Gondolin mirrors the fall of Troy, particularly Virgil's account of it in the Aeneid, which was actually my favorite chapter in the book.
Yeah.
There's some stuff in there about Beren and Luthien and how that shows the influence of the ancient Greek story of Orpheus and Eurydice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, of course, was also retold in Middle English as Sir Orfeo.
That's right.
Which we know Tolkien was very familiar with.
Yep.
So that's just a few that I remember being discussed at length in the book, but there are a lot of others.
There are a lot of others. As we've discussed, the story of Numenor was Tolkien's version of the myth of Atlantis, which, of course, has its origins in a story written by the philosopher Plato. And Tolkien himself acknowledged in letter number 131, everybody take a drink. It's been a while since we mentioned that one.
It has, hasn't it?
It has. I know. We've got to have gone at least a dozen episodes without referencing 131.
I know.
But yeah, in that letter, Tolkien acknowledged that Turin Turambar was based not only on Kullervo, which is the inspiration that everybody always talks about,
sure,
but also Sigurd the Volsung and the Greek Oedipus.
Yeah, and there are other Greek inspirations that people pick up on as well. I mean, like the Valar. The Valar have as much in common with the pagan Greek gods as they do the Norse gods, if not more so sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think we've talked about this before. If you look at the three main male Valar, for example, Manwë, Ulmo, and Aule, they map pretty well to Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Now,
yeah, pretty close, yeah.
You know, Aule isn't a god of the dead like Hades is. That's Mandos. But
right.
Hades was a god of precious metals, which you find beneath the earth. He was married to a goddess of agriculture. So there are some similarities there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've always felt like if Tolkien had ever gotten around to writing the full story of the Voyage of Eärendil, sad that he didn't, but you got to think it would be an awful lot like Homer's Odyssey and the Voyage of Odysseus.
Absolutely.
So, again, these are just a few that I can think of. We could probably spend an entire episode on this. People are spotting influences like this all the time. We had a listener on Facebook just a couple of days ago. Sam D. in Houston pointed out on Facebook that the ancient stone basin in Ithilien that we talked about in episode 236, he's like, this sounds an awful lot like an ancient Greek nymphaeum, which is a monument consecrated to a water nymph.
Yeah, we thought of it maybe as a bath of some kind.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, Sam, who I believe is an archaeologist, he's like, oh, no, this sounds like a nymphaeum. It's like, yeah, it actually totally does.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, a lot like that.
Out. Yeah. And that's so cool after you get that description of the disheveled dryad loveliness.
Oh, but, anytime you can throw that phrase into the episode again is great. I love disheveled dryad loveliness. Yeah.
Yeah. But look, I mean, the truth is, although we generally think of Tolkien as primarily inspired by Germanic mythology and medieval tradition, and he was.
Yeah.
He was a really, really educated man who incorporated a lot of different influences into that leaf mold of his mind that gave rise to the stories. And Greek mythology was one of those. And sometimes it's really obvious and sometimes less so.
Pretty amazing stuff, though. You're right. So well read, you can't help but see the influences of all those different sources. But the classics are there, no doubt about it. No doubt.
Absolutely.
Well, folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. But please be sure to join us again next week when we learn the 5 names of our favorite wizard.
Oh, and we're also going to reach the window on the west.
Yes.
But before we do, folks, we want to take a moment now to thank the team that helps make this show better. Our research assistants, including Tanya Pleshkova, along with our Barlaman, Becca Davis, producer Jordan Rennells, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, and website guru Phil Dean.
And speaking of the website, please be sure to visit us there at theprancingponypodcast.com. We've got show notes, hilarious outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get all sorts of PPP merch.
And definitely check out our library page. You know we love the books here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, and we've provided links for you to get nearly every book we mention on the show. Now, we do get a few pennies from the purchases you make there, so we thank you.
And we also want to thank some more really important people, our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'm going to start with DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, Bruce in California, Mario in Utah, Seth in Texas, B in California, Joseph in Texas, and Kathy from North Carolina.
And then we have Lori from Washington, Carlos in California, Brian from the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Hal from Washington, D.C., Lise in Switzerland, Dylan in Australia, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, and Dorwin in Michigan. Thank you all so very much for your support of the show.
Very much.
And
thank you.
Everyone out there, please be sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe to the show through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast app is.
And one last thing as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, your mighty heirlooms to Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com. I promise they will cause us no strife, no contention between us. Just send them to me and that he won't even know. And if you want a chance to have your actual voice heard, you can send us audio of you asking your question by visiting podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Just make sure to please still send the question to Barliman as well so we can track it. Now, Barliman's a lot more reliable lately, but we do get a lot of mail. So we'll get to you as soon as we can, and your question or comment may be featured on a future episode.
As always, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time,
farewell, friends.